Good evening. Welcome to Tarweed Works in Progress. This is our second edition of Tarweed Works in Progress, and we're going to have a group of mostly poets this time. I think we had more prose in the first one, so this time we're kind of leaning towards poetry. We're very excited to welcome a group of wonderful writers tonight. And we want to dedicate tonight's show to all the Kurdish people all over the world. Our hearts are with you in your struggles. And we are very grateful that these writers will come and read with us, and that we all have the rights and the ability to speak out and to have our voices be heard. We're all here with the great consciousness of difficulties in the world around us and gratitude that we're here together. So I'd like to introduce, I'm Jean Znidarsic, the moderator tonight of the beginning. I'd like to introduce our first reader, a very well-known and wonderful local poet, Patrick Daly.
Thank you, Jean, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to read a couple of sort of personal, actually childhood poems. I spent part of my childhood in Jamaica, and those were some of the happiest years of my life, followed by some of the unhappiest in an English boarding school. And in between, my sister and I spent some marvelous but all too brief school vacations in Uganda with my parents who had moved there by then. So these first two poems are about those years when I was between the ages of about 6 and 11. And the first one is about our dog, Simon. Something about ears twitching away raindrops. A story of a small, strong dog, Simon, who loved us humans, but was hot to fight anything that moved, or stupidly stood, on 4 legs, and dragged my poor parents one after another at the end of the leash into stories no one wanted to be in. A pig down a mountain path, a German shepherd from one end of Exeter High Street to the other. But it was the twitch I was thinking of, the twitch of his ears that first brought him to us. My father had bought him, tiny then, a puppy, for me and my sister Harriet, and was carrying him to our house in his arms, and Simon, his sense of trouble already full grown, leapt out of my dad's arms and disappeared on a patch of wild scrub and trees. And this was Jamaica in the rainy season, and the rain was coming down hard and harder and the lightning forking, and my mother said, "We'll start lunch, your father won't come home in this." And then there was my father, soaked, carrying Simon, a placid seal pup, in his arms, telling us how he never would have found him at a kinglier hour of calling and cursing in the storm, but for the twitching of his ears under a bush. He put him down, and then there was the cat hissing, and there was Judy, the mongrel we inherited with the house, standing over Simon like a tent or a double-decker dog, ready to defend him as fiercely as my parents later had to against injured parties. The pig owner, the goat owner, the uncounted dog owners. Because he never meant harm and didn't know his own strength, but always wanted to try it, a knight at arms ready for the tournament. The cat disappeared contemptuously as we watched down into the cellar and right back out with 5 new kittens and no need to say, "There." And I will tell you about the turkey chick he once caught in his terrible locking jaws and held under one paw, captive but unbitten, in the shade of a tree until he forgot, or I think took pity, and lifted the paw. So there was no question when we left for England of not taking Simon, and no question when they left for Uganda of not taking Simon, though they left us locked up in England in our grey boarding schools. But he kept fighting, and the police came, and they had to chain him up, and that was too sad. So they gave him away, far away, a farm in Kenya, they wrote and told us. And I still think the bitter letter Harriet wrote them back, "How nice and peaceful your lives must be now," was about Simon. And maybe they should have let him go sooner or never picked him up, instead of being pulled, slithering and cursing into love. But 60 years later, looking out and seeing more than I want, and less, through this window opened by a wing shadow on green, a twitch or quick wrinkle in the surface of things, I'm glad they embraced the trouble without asking if he was worth it, for as long as they could stand it. And I'd say it's good to be loved that much, if not great. And the next poem is called When He Was Good, and it is addressed to my father, and it has an epigraph from the book of Psalms. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. Out of nights of flying ants, the tall mud towers where the people lit fires to burn them out because these ants were a delicacy, the wings, or did I imagine this, glowing in the firelight, all dark except the ant fires and the thin shaft of our headlights baffled by the dark, the swift dark of the equator and sudden heat of day, ripening coffee berries, a forest of vanilla, the yesterday, today, and tomorrow tree beside the veranda, the frangipani, huge cracks in the earth, and red dust before the rains came like armies. The black mamba you disturbed in the woodpile early one morning and brought into our bedrooms for us to admire, dead, dangling from the prongs of the machete, and Harriet obligingly screamed. From this steam of delicious soup that could never be England, from under the father wings of the memory of 11, arises a trip, a long, long trip in a car on a road not particularly meant for cars, and darkness again, an inn far out in the wilderness, the bush. And we sat outside to eat by lamplight, a symphony of insects and monkeys in the trees. Or else, no, we sat inside in a dining room with oil lamps and fans, where you ordered yoti qua yoti, everything for everyone. And it was in the morning we sat outside after a night hardly asleep because of the bats, at trestle tables, perhaps under a flowery trellis, and ate water buffalo meat, pale and stringy. You would not think it good for breakfast in the dawn following the zooming night of the bats and their wing brushings. But I remember how good it was. And later in the day, in the game reserve, the Queen Elizabeth National Park, after I took a photo of a living water buffalo and an African buffalo and long grass where a lion really was, the car came tiredly to a stop. And you got out and opened the hood and found the water hose broken and tore the plastic lining from our mother's travel kit and patched it. And you and I walked, your shadow enfolding me against the earth-cracking heat, to a waterhole where there was a rhino I may have imagined, and hippos I haven't, low in the water like fallen trees with faces for roots, cheeks and nostrils of stupendous uncles, only their eyes moving as we did, allowing us to fill our can. And as we walked back, I wanted to hold your hand, although I was too old, because it was marvelous. And the car started smooth as a cat. You were marvelous that day, when your shadow in the heat was still large enough to hold me without harm that day and for a little longer. And perhaps I'll close with the In Memoriam poem I wrote for my father after he died about 20 years ago. Grief and Horses. The horses on the other bank, waiting as ours cross the soaking, sucking meadow and clomp in the fast water, too strong for our feet. Their rumps to us, their riders letting them graze, their haunches bunching as they shift their weight and easing, bunching and easing, like water over rock, gathering and falling. The sun on bay, pink-dappled, snow-melt spotted, brown flanks that make you think of the ruddy cones of fallen pines, rings that counted the years crumbled and spilled, softening into dust. How hard it is to write this beauty aright, that the earth with so little effort raises up, and with less, scarcely a shiver, sucks back when it falls. Every hold relaxes in time, and this means death to us, and the tearing effort of grief that is much like dying, like bursting through something that still resists, a great handsome horse sure of its path, surging where we did not think a path could be made. Strong, cold, white as water falling.
Thank you, Patrick. Those are beautiful. Would you mind answering a few questions
not at all.
about your work? So we're curious today, like, we're trying to find out whether our writers have other media in which they work. Do you do any art or any other?
I try to draw sometimes, but I emphasize try.
Yeah, just for fun.
Yeah.
How many projects in poetry do you usually have in the pipeline? Are you working on one poem?
About 0.
Oh, really? So they just come one at a time?
Well, I try to write something and mostly succeed in writing something every day, but it's just scribbled, you know, it's not, and I have no idea what connection that has with writing poetry, except that if I don't do it, I don't write poetry. So it's the only thing I know that really helps, although I have no idea why, because I write really trivial stuff most of the time. And as I say, the only thing I do know is if I don't do that, I don't do anything.
Okay. So when you do write poetry, do you have a particular, if I write, I have what I consider the writable spot, and it's like the best place in the coffee shop where I can get the right cup and the right chair, and the feng shui is just right. That's my writable spot. Do you have a writable spot?
No, I think because I've spent most of my life working, I've trained myself to write wherever I am. Where I work now is in, you know, I work with what I think of as a bunch of 12-year-olds. They're a little older than that, but they play ping pong, they play Nerf ball. You know, there's all this stuff going on around me. So whether I'm working, you know, on what I'm supposed to be working on or writing a poem, I put my headphones on and I just write. So I guess to amplify the answer, if you've got a moment, I would say I learned to write from watching my mother cook. And she had no method whatsoever.
Yeah.
And sometimes things turned out wonderfully. I'm still waiting for a poem of mine to turn out wonderfully. But sometimes she created wonderful things, and we'd say, "We'll do that again, make that cake again." And she couldn't do it. And she made one, I remember, that exploded, which was actually delicious. But it
Was that the best one?
No, but it was right up there.
Awesome. So do you play any of that ping pong, or do you?
No.
You're always, okay.
I've come to hate ping pong just from the...
Yes, because it's around you.
Yes, just from the, you know, the rhythm of the bouncing. It interferes with every other rhythm you can imagine.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much. Those are beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm delighted to introduce our next reader, Kalamu Shashay, who's a very well-known local writer of much talent. Welcome, Kalamu. Oops.
Thank you, Jean, for inviting me to be on your show, and I'm very happy to be here with you. Thanks to the care, concern, and bravery of today's youth, I am so hopeful about our future. I give thanks to them, their families, and all others who are standing by them. We all witnessed the magnificent work some weeks ago when millions of youth came together, took a day off of school and their studies to put the world on notice that we need to move quickly to get busy in addressing the global warming issues that we are facing in our lives. Our youth want and they have a right to live and have a future. And so, in honor of those voices from the Native American youth and other youth activists here in the United States, Pacific Islands, India, Germany, Scotland, Italy, the Netherlands, Uganda, Argentina, Sweden, and many more places on this earth, I offer this poetic work to help keep you reminded about your responsibility to the youth. Whether or not you brought children into this world, you have a responsibility to every boy and girl. The extended family is a way of life for us and must not be forgotten just because you live in the Americas. You have an inherent responsibility to teach the children what's right and wrong if we are to produce future leaders who are going to be strong. You must see that a way is open for learning, and with pride keep our past and current history turning within their minds so that they may not fall behind. Thus you must make yourself an example of that which you teach, which should enhance the beauty and the greatness of each. And if you don't positively teach all of that which you are capable, for every bad act that I see, I'm going to hold you responsible. Men, for every bad act that I see, I'm going to hold you responsible. Women, for every bad act that I see, I'm going to hold you responsible. Elders, for every bad act that I see, I'm going to hold you responsible. For all of us, for every bad act that I see, I'm going to hold you responsible. We have a responsibility to our youth.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
All of your work. So I'm curious about your process too. Do you have a lot of different projects going on at the same
All
time?
the time.
All the time?
I am a busy practicing poet and beyond. I'm very passionate about the arts. It's so important that we have this be a dominant part in our lives. I think that because we're not connected to creativity as we should be, this is why we have this world being like it is. And so on a daily basis, I'm doing things, anything from writing poetry, of course, to teaching it. I'm at the East Palo Alto Library, so I do that on a monthly basis, kind of set up a clinic so people can come in and get their poetry on, and I help them out on that. Awesome. And then I get to curate some poetry events, and I also get to curate poetry showcases in many different places as well.
Wow, so you are busy.
I'm busy.
Yeah, do you have a writable spot? Is there like an ideal way or place or situation in which you feel the most creative and productive?
You know, what I have now discovered, having lived life this long, is that life is a wellspring for where you can be in this world. And so I make my place be wherever it shows up. However that muse comes, I'm ready to go. You know, of course, I got to be careful. Sometimes things can come to me while I'm driving on the freeway, so, you know, it's going to be dangerous to be trying to write all this kind of stuff down.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty much disciplined, but I'm comfortable to write however way it comes.
Do you have ways of keeping out the news of the day or the distractions of kind of the upheavals that we're experiencing?
Yeah,
right
it's
now?
called don't listen to the TV. Cut everything off, you know. And then sometimes it all depends, you know. I think what the Creator has done with me is to kind of put me in a situation where I actually can filter some things now. So I don't have to listen to all that chatter and all that noise, because if we do that, we're not going to ever get anything done. And I just really feel it's important to have that voice and put it out there, and whatever it takes to make that happen, you just do it.
Well, that's wonderful, and we're so happy that you came tonight
Thank
and that you're
you.
doing all that you're doing.
Thank
you so much.
Very much. Thank you.
Okay, our next reader will be doing a piece of fiction, which is an excerpt from a longer piece. Please welcome Chance Penway.
This is an untitled Tarweed original work in progress. Fran awoke with a sense of dread. Her throat was raw, but she hadn't been snoring. After a while, she placed her hand on Alfred's arm and tugged his earlobe with the other. He woke with a jerk. "What?" he said. "Do you smell that?" He threw off the covers and toed around in the dark for his slippers. While Alfred headed downstairs, Fran checked the front and back bedrooms and made sure the windows were closed. No flames were visible across the hillside of Laguna Honda Hospital and Twin Peaks. As Alfred hurried down the flight of stairs, he saw no sign of fire on any of the floors. At the lowest level, he checked the laundry room and garage and headed back up, with a stop to poke his head in the sketchy wine cellar with his handyman wiring. No smoke in there. They met in the dining room on the forest side of the house. Clear, they said, both short of breath. Outside the windows, gnarled pines loomed in the haze, underlit by yellow street lamps. Except for a few porch lights on the uphill side of the street, it was dark. I had hoped the rains would have bought us at least a year without this, Alford said. He opened a window, and the air came in, sharp and acrid, as if they were downwind of a campfire in the woods, which they were. They proceeded with the drill. Fran opened her laptop at the dining room table to see what the fire department and the neighbors on next door were posting. Alford set up the air purifiers and struggled to fit the new HEPA filter in the narrow jaws of the outdated furnace. Fran could not go back to sleep. Half an hour after they settled in, she heard a series of distant barks that escalated to shrill howls. Alfred had fallen right to sleep. She sat up and ran a hand along his back. He awoke again with a start. Sorry, you need to wake up again. What didn't we already do? It's the coyotes. Coyotes, he said, staying put. Did you hear them? Sure, that's normal. Fran was at the window, looking out toward Sutro Tower. It loomed, its red lights blinking, as always. When they moved into the neighborhood, they used to imagine ways for this erector set to be destroyed. Earthquake, college prank, North Korea. It stands as a steadfast ghost that appears and vanishes in the fog. It has become a beacon that leads them home from anywhere in the city. Fran and Alford are now fond of it. They're on the wrong side. Wrong side of what? The coyotes are in the forest. What? I didn't hear any sirens. There weren't any. The howling, and they're howling for no reason. They're up the hill. These urban coyotes are a strange breed, rarely seen, rarely heard, except when the city's midnight ambulance sirens prompt them to howl. Then they're all chatty with their neighboring friends who are driving to and from the hospital under the watchful eye of the tower. The next door online group had once talked about a den on the opposite side, but Fran and Alford never heard them there. Alford suspected that band had moved on or joined the others, lured by the siren song. To hell with the coyotes, I need sleep, said Alford. I smell something different, Fran said. Let's talk in the morning. It's probably reached the refinery, that's what you're smelling. Get up. I'll do whatever you want in the morning. Fran stood for a while in the front bedroom, watching and listening at the windows, and went back to bed. When the sirens did start, Alford sat up. Their sound was coming from the wrong side of the house. The recent fires had been contained to Napa Valley, so their evidence slowly drifted in on the wind, raining ash as silently as snow. The loud, frequent sirens meant this campfire was close. They had seen the rapid effects of the Berkeley Hills fire across the bay when they were first married, so they knew. They threw on some clothes and climbed up the hill in the direction of the sirens. I knew there was something different about the smell. This is a burnt plastic stench, Fran said. Yes, you did smell the undertones of coal tar in that Syrah last week, said Alfred. They approached as close as they were allowed, but could only see the engines lined up at the curve in the road, blocking their view. No leaping flames, but plenty of blackish smoke. I hope it's not that Mabeck design house. They wanted it to be the adjacent empty but overgrown lot with its partially buried stuff left over from the former house. Nothing to see here, said the captain. You bet. Alfred said under his breath as he and Fran turned away. "Nothing to see because you won't let us closer." In the first light of the morning, Fran and Alfred wasted no time to return to the site. If they hadn't been there the night before, they would have been able to follow the rivulets of sandy fire hose water that still trickled down the sidewalks and gutters to the nearest drain. Sand playing the part of topsoil in these inland beachfront hills. They were happy to find the Maybeck house intact. However, that empty lot was not empty. Some of the overgrowth had burned away to reveal a shed, charred but still standing. It was at the end of a short gravel drive, loosely wrapped with 2 ribbons of caution tape. They approached it without caution. The wide double doors were closed with a chain lock, but the top of one door had a hole burned through it. Alfred stepped his way through the ashy mud, got to his toes to see. He whispered, "There's a car in there." "How did it get there through the bushes and the branches?" Fran said. "It's an old one, a Hudson. 48 maybe," he said. "The windshield's broken through, but some of the interior is still okay. Sad to see such a beauty in that condition. You know, that's the car from On the Road, the original lowrider." "Let me see," Fran said. She slid a log over and stood on it to look. The brief view that Alfred took was nowhere near enough for Fran. She turned her phone's flashlight on and took a slow, human version of an 180-degree panorama photo. She saw the metal of the gardening tools that just yesterday were attached to the end of wooden poles. Paint cans with spillover, which showed the origin of those pink Mamie Eisenhower-style bathrooms so cherished by the elders in the neighborhood during their now ancient remodels. And cans of God knows what chemicals people used as cures for past household problems, only to cause much bigger problems. Malathion, benzene, perchloride. Fran was jolted out of her mundane inventory. "A purse handle," she said to no one in particular into the darkness of the shed. "How are you doing?" said the gentleman in khakis, collared shirt, and Skechers. Alfred knew they wouldn't be the only curious neighbors. "We didn't know this thing was here," said Alfred. "My wife suspected last night this was more than just a tinder fire." "It has been a couple bad fire seasons," said the gentleman. Alfred said, "I'm glad it didn't get to either of our houses. We live nearby on Pacheco. You?" Oh, I don't live in the neighborhood," said the gentleman. "I'm the caretaker for that one." He indicated the house caddy corner from the shed. "Ah, you're here pretty early in the morning," said Alfred. "Did they call you over because they were concerned about the fire?" "No. Last night I was in the shed, went back to the house, and I don't know what happened. But I noticed the smoke 15 minutes later," explained the gentleman. What? Are you saying you were in this shed last night?" "You said you worked for the house over there," challenged Alfred. "Oh, this is part of the same property. Her attached garage is an addition. This was the original," said the gentleman. "Strange," prompted Alfred. "Not really, if you consider that when that house was built, there were only horse cart paths here, not roads," assured the gentleman. "Show's over, Fran." By his tone, she knew it was time to go. The two started to walk away. "Bye, Fran," said the gentleman with a wave. He turned to Alfred. "What's your name?" "Al. You?" "I'm Lenny. Nice to meet you. Maybe we'll see each other again." After they were out of his sight, Fran said, "He knows our names and you told him where we live." "You're right, probably not my best moment," Alfred admitted. "Though I think he's just worried that the poor caretaker will be blamed and he'll lose his job." "I'm cold," said Fran, as they climbed the public stairs back to Castaneda Street. "The fog came in early tonight," said Alfred. "Want my scarf?" At the top of the stairs, they skulked through the charred area and stopped to put on their headlamps. "You're shining it at their windows," said Alfred, placing his hand over Fran's lamp. "I've got it," she said. Heads down, they proceeded up the gravel drive. Someone had removed the log Fran had stood on earlier. "Give me a boost," she said. Alfred got on one knee, steadied the other while Fran put a foot on his thigh, and pulled herself up against the rickety shed door. "It's gone," she said. "He took it." "He took the purse?" said Alfred. They covered their headlamps while two cars passed and turned and walked back to the street. "Wait," she said, "I see something." As Alfred stooped to search, a coyote growled nearby. Alfred spotted a shiny object pressed by a shoe print into the ashy mud. A rusty metal lipstick case glinted from his beam. Thank you.
Awesome. I want to know whose lipstick that is.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah, well, we hope to find out soon. So what kind of situation do you like to work in? What's the most productive situation for you?
Well, to me, visual stimuli is fine, but auditory stimuli is too much. I can't listen to music that has lyrics, for example. Maybe some classical, but it has to be light. But anything happening visually would be fine. There could be a mime troupe performing in front of me and all that movement. As long as I didn't say anything, it would be fine.
Awesome. How do you keep your mind off the things that are going on in our world so that you can concentrate?
Well, I am embarrassed to say that I have not really been a political person much in my life, or thought of myself as that. But I can't avoid it these days. It does affect me. While my work is not political, it's an unsettling time, and I am unsettled.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has to find their way of dealing with what's happening and try to stay present so they can get their work done. Do you have other projects, writing projects in the pipeline, or other kinds of media that you like to work in?
Well, I do. I do a lot of technical writing, the not fun part, but I try to infuse some creativity into that without it turning into fiction.
Yeah, I see. Well, thank you very much. We
Thank
look
you.
forward to seeing more of your work.
Thank you.
Okay, our next reader is the wonderful poet Kelly Crescio-Muller.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. These poems I'm reading are from my first full-length collection, which is in circulation. It's called Portent with Moonset and Blackbirds. For a long time, I wanted to drink a cup of winter, to become tipsy on early dark and longer starshine. The thinning light, my favorite ether. These days I am uncertain, dead reckoning my way through, surrendering to mystery and surprise of mapless navigation. That fistful of blackbirds thrown across my windshield, I don't know what their flurried wing beats were trying to tell me. Not every moment is a teacher. In the same way, patience does not mean measured in action. I am only a woman who continues to bury her dead, wearing a clenched jaw that expects diamond dust from the crown crush, shoulders that ride so high on worry they mistake themselves for wings. I never liked what I was called, even though my father named me, and my name in his voice was the last word I'd hear him speak. Last night, I went to bed feeling hopeless and profoundly lonely. I left the curtains open wide. Sleep plowed a ragged field of uneven rows, but in the morning's early darkness, the fullest moon poured its cool, bewitching light into the small bowls of my room and garden. As it hung impossibly low over the Pacific, I drank and drank. This is called Away. Overnight, Earth's hourglass turns round, spilling ocean into sky. Starshine against seafloor black, a radiant play of brilliance. Just there, a swarm of blue stars, their nebulous cluster fixed over us, such quiet wonder only possible because of the darkness. We have been away from each other for the sigh of a day, and instinctively my palm searches for the length of your spine, fingertips count vertebrae and breaths. In this canyon of distance, the ripening desire for home hangs low enough to bite. Instead, I stare and stare. Neck bends back, surrendering my throat to cosmic strands of pearls, knowing every single moment something or someone is leaving, red-shifting in elongated waves. There is no siren's wail coming closer in alarm, then fading to an unhearable hum. By the time the horizon dims, it is too late. This is called Departure. 2 months ago, I scribbled poem notes on hospital paper towels. My mother dying, snowed on morphine, pneumonic lungs sinking boats she wanted no one to bail out. Her small hands inflated twice their size as if to keep afloat. The echocardiogram detailed a scallop shell of aortic waves, mitral valve murmurations. How many secrets did her starlings harbor? To mark each changing hour, Pegasus, nailed mid-flight on the beige wall, shook his mane from side to side. I consulted the meadow priests of purple thistle, whose prickly heads provided no comfort. They said, "Death is a circling wolf. There will be no one left to call you by your full name. Grief falls in rain-whipped sheets, and the shadows of the dead weigh more than you know." I looked to the night sky for a comet tail, but only cold stars stared back, unblinking. That month my mother died, I did not bleed, and the tips of my hair wintered. A book finished inside me, my ink tongue froze. This is Suburban Aubade with a French horn, and it begins with an epigraph from Ingmar Bergman. The demons don't like fresh air. What they like best is if you stay in bed with cold feet. This morning, mo leaf blower, then bird song, autumn chills, stained glass leaves, fissures orange where summer used to live. My body carries me over cement trails, breaks through tethers of glistening web, first down the street. The neighbor's yard, punctuated with foil, gauze, playing cards, curiosities stuck in dry, knee-high weeds. An arm of Bermuda grass, suburban kelp, catches my laces, tries to pull me down into its resentful sea. As a teen, her parents made her mow the blighted patch where lawn used to be. A few houses down, the garage door of the quiet blue house is open. The wife sculpts her juniper tams as though they are giant bonsai, each cut precise, unerring, a week of mornings to shape the hedges into great waves. She disappears before 9 a.m. I don't know her name. I round the corner toward the elementary school my children have outgrown. Car lines narrow the street. All the parents bow to phones. One child's science project has lost its cell membrane in the boxwood. There isn't enough time to create a second skin. Sidestepping puddles of golden rain lanterns, I hear Brahms' horn trio playing from an open window. Notes ricochet off the freeway's barrier wall, trapeze through the air. When I was small, my mother taught me about the French horn. her dawns now an hourglass of yesterdays. Despite the drought, some lawns mushroom with dead caps, enough to poison the entire block. Goodbye, sex offenders. So long, neighbors who leave their howling dog outside all night. Farewell, fans of insomniac home improvement. Sweat darkens my underwire. Back home from my kitchen window, the hills look blue in the arms of an old moon. I baptize eggs for breakfast. Already morning detaches, floats toward night's throat. And the last one is called Something to Remember. Darkness does not hunger for anything. It has everything it needs. The ribs of shadows are fat with secrets of the living and the dead. It never wallows in loneliness, never says, leave a message for me if you can. It doesn't care about your tongue of honey and stars, your breath of apples and wine. It's busy quilting corners of indifference and will return again and again. As you go from room to room, cloaking your mirrors for winter, let the coldness you feel at the nape move in like fog, shawling you in her gown of gray beads. Listen when she whispers. If you are patient, your eyes will adjust to the dark. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
So are you willing to talk a little bit about your writing practice?
Yes, of course. Sure.
Do you have a writable spot?
Anywhere that's quiet.
Yeah.
I like quiet. I like my solitude. So cafe writing is not good for me.
Doesn't work for
Doesn't
you,
work
huh?
for me at all. So yeah, sometimes just at my kitchen table, sometimes at my little corner desk in my bedroom. We have a very tiny house, so we use whatever space we can. Sometimes out on the deck if it's nice, and wherever, as long as it's quiet. Usually, yeah, that's important.
How do you deal with keeping at bay what's happening in the world, or welcoming it in so that it stimulates your work?
Yeah, it's very challenging because you want to be connected with what's going on, and yet it can be utterly drowning as well, and you have to really find this balance. So I try to have a balance of staying off and on social media when I can, because I find you can really get pulled into a lot of things in that way, or just setting a time limit to how much am I going to read of the news, and then and making sure I spend enough time to counterbalance that in nature. That's a real healer.
You go
For
hiking
me.
or
I do. I like to walk and hike, and just even being in my backyard with my lovely dog. So just being in the elements of nature is, and the ocean as well. But the Pacific is
very healing.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. Do you have a lot of projects going on at one time, or one
Not
that you-
usually. I just finished redoing this book again and trying to get it in a really good shape. And so sometimes I spend more time not writing and just doing other things like art or music. And
So you do work in different mediums.
I do. So when I'm not doing poetry, I'm doing something else, and I just, one informs the other, and everything feeds the well.
Wonderful.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very
And
much.
good luck with your book.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to turn the moderator role over to my co-producer, Keri Wagner, for the next few readers. Please welcome Keri Wagner. Welcome, Keri.
Thanks, Jean. My name is Keri Wagner, and I am privileged to help co-produce the second episode of Tarweed, Works in Progress. Thank you. Our next reader will share with us some of her poetry. Please welcome Charlotte Muse.
Thank you. It's getting on for Halloween, so I thought I'd do some poems to do with ghosts. And it's amazing, when I started to look for some. I have ghosts in poems. But I'll start with a lighter poem. It's called Dead Rat in the Grass. You'll have to guess what it's about. Dead rat in the grass. You are gray and velvety still, though not for long, Saint Rat. Your tail lies limp as a string. There's a film on your brightness, your eyes an empty bubble. Summer evenings, we'd watch you run from the neighbor's garage roof to our garage roof to the ground beneath the arbor where hangs the trumpet vine. Someone ate the charred leaves. We believe it was you. Someone chewed ripe fruit. It was you. To be fair, 'twas us too. And I too am solitary, looking for what feeds me. Your hunting days are over. Should I bury you or let you lie and turn to food while the world watches? I've pinned you here dead to the glaring white page. A simple memory would be kinder. Though I don't know what I'll wish for when the cat catches me. I believe in private life, but not in private poetry. Okay, so now to continue the cheerful theme, last days. One evening as we sat on our patio, there was a great crack and a hole opened in the backyard. Dead souls streamed out, unreeling upwards, all in black and white and mildly lighted like an old movie. And then there were more cracks and more holes, more souls, as if the topsoil were unknitting itself. People fled inside and stared out at all the spirits rising like a backward rain. Since then, we've been waiting for what we don't know. Is God nigh? That's the question. We've sent up flares and planes, but there's a thick cloud layer and no information. And so, in the half-light our days have become, we go to the churches to plead and to the nightclubs for comfort, pulling our chairs in from the windows to watch the floor show at the center of the room. The mayor in his top's hat sings, "If you knew Susie like I know Susie, oh, 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 what a girl." At these times, the dead are like wallpaper. This is not to say we can ignore them. We're trying to repent and not to dread, though we don't like walking through the dead. You feel as if you'd passed in front of a projector. There's no sensation, but there's a shadow on you. And for a moment, a face replaces your face. It seems only right to stand still. It seems only right to run. Stradivari's ghost speaks to the future. Look for me through the murky water of the years between us. The sun comes in like a distant fire. One of the fish in a school is me. Or imagine my shape as a cello, if you like, with a shirt hung on it. Then arms, then legs. Use any face you want. Nobody ever painted mine. Can you hear me? I will call to Francesca or to one of the children. Listen, I'll test an instrument. Listen. I'm sitting at my bench on the roof in fine weather, surrounded by shavings. Below is the din of Cremona. Do you see my tools laid out, the violins wet with varnish, drying on a rack? I'm only asking you to imagine what you yourself have heard and seen, a man at work with his chisels and planes, his patterns, his woods, his hands, his ears. Each decision means work, refusals, time, the wearying demands of perfection. I made perfect things. I made violins which hold the whole world. But I beg you now, imagine a life for me, the way Francesca could say Antonio, so that I heard nothing else. The mornings when we stayed in bed until the children climbed in laughing. Days with the sun on the river and birds flying. Please, let me live for a moment before I return to the tower of my name. I was a man until I turned to music. And now, digging at night. This has an epigraph. The Indians were working digging a ditch day and night. And what do you think? Death was there too, working along with them with her head tied up. Ascension Sororsino. After the padre told them to dig a trench, they asked him how wide. But though he said it was for water, he measured himself head to toe and added 6 inches. And how long? Dig until I tell you to stop. And so they worked night and day on the trench. Back in the settlement, people groaned and vomited or lay naked with the pox while flies left eggs on their sores, and the diggers dug the trench. They did not believe it was for water. The sounds of the shovel, that when blade hits earth, the thud of clods, they heard these in their dreams. When the woman first appeared, some said they had seen her among the houses, but no one knew her name. She would arrive each night with the rise of the Thule fog and the fall of dark. And how old was she? Who could tell? With her hair and her face wound with cloth. Out in the gloom filled with cricket whir and twig snaps, coyote howls, small creatures hiding from owls, and the indifferent stars, she never spoke. The moon left her eyes alone. Those who saw her face said her eyes were slitted and her mouth wide open. She'd move her head slowly as a deaf person might, or whip it around fast like a spinning leaf, though you never felt a wind. It was said that she put her back into the work, spading deftly, flinging up soil, and now and then looking around her as if she were burying treasure. And in the year 1812 alone, 1,179 Indians died of cholera and smallpox in Mission San Juan Bautista. They were buried in their blankets without coffins in a mass grave. I just wrote that poem for them. And this one, I guess, will be the last one, called Resurrection. We're waiting for the day when the dead lover comes warping and bending the seeable world. When he bursts into here, a clown through a hoop of paper, the sky will waver and the air take on texture like a scarf blown across a breathing mouth. He'll stride through the world towards you and me, trailing darkness from where he's been. When he opens his mouth, what will he be trying to say? He'll look at us through his lighted eyes, as if through raw eggs. He'll smile, so we see the great shadow at the back of his throat. He'll smile and smile. You and I, who can say my life as if it were something we owned, will want more out of him. We'll know him for useless. Nothing to do but plant him again. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Your imagery is just fantastic.
Thank you.
How do you like to work?
Well, I have what I grandly call my office, but it is my office, and it was a tool shed that's attached to the garage, but I got it sheetrocked in and everything, so I have a place to go. And I try every day to go before I look at, Shashay would approve, before I look at the computer or the news or anything, but I only make it about half the time, maybe a little more. I'm getting better. But I guess I feel that this is a very hard time to be a poet, because poets have to cultivate receptivity. You can't call up from your unconscious what you want. You have to wait for it to come. And then, so we're torn between the need for, this is of course always been true, but I think it's just so much more intense now. We're torn between that kind of receptivity and the desire for action. The news is all for action. The silence is all for receptivity. And I just think, and then of course, add to the mix the sorts of distractions that there are. it's sort of like, do you watch the train wreck or do you not watch the train wreck? So anyway, I say those things out of real gratitude because I have this little room, and sometimes I write outside too.
Oh, yes. Is that where you get some of your ideas?
Well, I have sometimes in the past, I have tried to organize my thoughts around a theme, like around violins or, various things, and write groups of poems, because I'm not an organized person, and somehow, it helps. But I forget what you asked me now.
I think you've answered it.
Okay. Well,
thank you so much, Charlotte Muse.
Thank you.
Our next reader is a writer and poet and local teacher. Please welcome Keri Heckman.
Thank you, Keri and Jean. The first poem I'm going to read is called Car Wash on El Camino Real. The day my friend lost against cancer her long, desperate battle to remain, to see her children grow, I, with my list of mundane tasks, set out driving pointlessly, unable to do or not do anything. Same streets she knew well, ending up out by the big car wash, where I absently gave my car over to several attendants who began to care for its transformation, vacuuming, then taking it into the wet machinery of shimmying black curtains, rotating blue brushes, streams of clear water, as though washing dust from the soul, as the Buddhists would say, before more attendants polished it inside and out with green towels. My friend, born in Iran, taught me about the spring festival Nowruz at the vernal equinox, where one jumps over a fire to replace sickness and struggles with vigor, saying, "My yellow is yours, your red is mine." A new year begins, a table is set with sumac, berries, sprouts, apples, but that year the flames could not restore her yellow skin, failing liver, though many cared for her, though her red devotion burned for her family. From a bench, I watched the car wash workers tend to their chore with clean towels, gently, paying attention to each wheel, door frame, cup holder, mirror, to send me forth gleaming. My tip made two people smile. I wanted their day to be good, who in giving revived me enough to go forth, bearing both scorch and shine. This one probably requires a little bit more of a leap of the imagination. In this era of online dating, there are these new types of connections that are possible. And it got me thinking, what if you could seek out a long-term meaningful relationship with a geographical feature like a lake or a canyon? Mm-hmm. And then I came upon this quote by the U.S. Geological Survey: "Canyons and valleys are difficult to date because they destroy evidence of their growth as they deepen." So this one's called Dating a Canyon, and that was the epigraph. "Once was a canyon, neither box nor blind, but remote, as she liked them. Why always pick the distant ones?" asked Mother. And no one said weathered, but can't disallow the washes, grooves, which oblige caution, owing torrents may surge without warning. More the sharp angles, rising shoulders she grew fond of, a certain thrill of peril, how ground might give way or hold strong. Can't tell till you're perched over ragged shale, rocky crag, testing your weight. She'd find herself high on a precipice, but lonely. Wanting to talk, she'd climb back down, pulled into the rift like every loose stone. Depth, deep silence, layers of time, like she was hardly even there. Maybe if you acknowledged me just once, she screamed. Once, once, Canyon replied. Yet the warm southern flank, an offer of wildflowers, place more enduring than any she'd known. Settling in, shadows come earlier, nights chill and immense. She saw how everything converges, then moves on. When storms arrived, saw her canyon give in to runoff, just like the rest, the bounty of evidence lost. This is a short one based on a proverb called "A Bird in the Hand." A bird in the hand is in danger. This is the truth my mother didn't say. I first thought it lucky to hold such soft, whirring, sculpted air. Yet another voice warned, you're holding a heart, easy to bleed as a blackberry, stains that linger. No one talks about what will happen to the held bird. Its fortune lies in the bush with its sanctuary of twigs or thorns, scraps of light shadow shifting. Meanwhile, the heart lives in darkness, practicing its design, licking away at time with regular stitches. But that's a proverb for another day. And I realized when Charlotte was talking about ghosts that I have a poem also about a spirit. So this will be my final poem, If There Must Be a Spirit, after Wallace Stevens. If there must be a spirit in the house, one who stirs the air with missing spoons and steals thread from the knees of boys' pants, let it trip in the hall, spilling heat into rooms, or carry the moon into the kitchen like a rescued bird. Let it rest behind walls with wires humming, spark of a vaster God and equally wild. Lacking tongue, let it speak in twists and groans of handle and hinge, or in books fallen, pages bent. It may nudge shadows across windows, crack bowls, coil tempers like it uncoils spools of saved ribbon, but let it not reveal the quickness of time, though we feel loss, slip, lank and changeable under the sofa and wait like a switch for the hand. In the oblique afternoon, if light fades the floorboards, if the young dog sighs itself old as corners settle daily accounts, if there must be a spirit who lets sorrow in with the spiders and quietly forwards the clocks, let it move soft in the drafts of each doorway sometimes, and so gently we can almost deny it is there. Thank you.
Thank you, Keri.
Hi, Keri. Thank you, Keri.
So tell me about how you find space to write.
Well, I think the space comes and goes, depending on other busyness and activities in the world. But I think I've realized I need to write when there are no people around. But dogs and cats are perfectly fine. I have one of each, and they're very helpful, actually. So,
And I know you're also a teacher of writing. How do you
Yes.
claim space to do your own work?
That's the part I'm having a little bit of trouble balancing right now. The teaching is a little bit more of a focus at the moment, but I'm thinking about it, and I think it's going to be a cycle of a little bit more of one, then a little bit more of the other. But the writing always pulls me back eventually. So.
And how do you have multiple projects happening at once, or how do you normally?
Yes, I guess what I try to do is sort of free write when something is on my mind. And I usually think it's terrible, and then sometimes I go back and look and one part of it is not completely terrible. And that's maybe the thing that gets developed.
Much of your work is lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keri.
Thank you, Keri.
Keri Beckman. Our next reader is also a very well-known local poet. Please welcome Lisa Rosenberg.
Thank you, Keri. Thank you, Jean, for all of your work supporting local writers. And thank you, Midpen, for hosting us and making it possible for us to share our work more widely. I'm going to start with some seasonal poems. And I actually asked Jean before tonight how in progress these works needed to be. And in poetry, we often have, I think of it more as threads in progress, because we may have some very complete poems, but the currents of work come in and out of our lives. There's a confluence of them. Some last for years, decades. Others are very brief. And so I am going to read all from currents in progress. Some have a very, very long arc. And start with a couple of seasonal pieces. Heart of Autumn. Is it always this elemental? Boulder, reeds, and water. Thoughts skimming off the pond to meet you. And geese flapping near the far shore. A wood platform toward the center. Past 3 blue buoys, demarcating the shallows from the depths, like seasons, like intent from invitation. The poplar. A poplar by the evergreen forest is a token. Its element, a different woodland. Not these old groves and ancient forms. Needle, cone, and frond. The flush of seedlings after fire. Impress of ferns. Then a poplar burning out of place, the autumn palette of a later order. More cyclical, finite, insistent. This next piece is from a work in progress, a long sequence of poems called Fire Season. They moved between the West Coast and the East Coast because it wasn't until I lived out of California for the first time in my 20s that I realized how much California landscape, natural history, and ecology was a part of me, especially having grown up in fire country. So this is a short section called Coast Range. I left before the fire season bloomed. In hills so bright with drought, my eyelids held their scalloped aftermark. A sparse autumn dressed sycamore and sweet gum. Poor cousins to the heraldry that overtakes the east. Land where the landscape paintings come true. The foliage earns its cliches. It burns with white-hot steeples and cold-water skies. It flies like dying embers from brownstones. How sovereign the maple's blood crown, studded with sun. The countryside opens like a schoolbook's softened pages, home to meadow battlefields, reverend, genteel, the color plates of history made real. I think there is something about growing up in California where you see these classic landscape paintings and somehow our landscapes aren't as real or not as codified into national and cultural mythology, perhaps. This next piece is from a landscape more local and familiar in Silicon Valley, and I offer it in the spirit of knowing that many of us don't spend perhaps any of our days out in the sunlight during the winter. But this is a familiar interior landscape here. Clean room. Do not shed your DNA here. Restrain your hair. Let no exhalation fog or mist the air. This jumpsuit, these tissue boots will rein you in as no other fashion can, while the bouffant cap in blue or white is the great equalizer, making grannies of all as we tend the sensitive but tensile strong, that by dust specks come undone. I did spend the first decades of my working life in some environments like that, in and out of different parts of engineering in the valley here. So I don't know if I should call that nostalgia, elegy, satire, what have you, kind of a blend. I'm going to close with a couple poems with the moon, one in a water element and the other sky. Moon jellies. Animate in the backlit black tank, you fly. Lace-edged ghost bells, propelled by such grace as I cannot match with my clumsy spine, my opacity. The aging truths inside me, unseen and unborn, stung by the fact of your eggs in arced rose, hot flower in a clear skull. This last piece is one that I hadn't planned on reading this evening, but then I thought, well, here today we had the first ever all-female spacewalk, and I grew up completely immersed in the space program. My father and grandfather both worked in it, and I eventually did as well. As a young child, I would go to the open houses at JPL and became a girl, a small girl, really like 4 and 5 years old, who fell into wonder with the space program. And at that time, everything was very lunar focused. It's also the first poem where I realized that objects can function, objects and landscape can both function as elegy. Slide rule. Tool of elegance, of speed against a different meter of a different day. A day you walked out to suburbs and cars and the faithful hold of motor oil on hot asphalt and orange blossoms. A sky ripe for the faint drone of airplanes. Their hulls designed with aligned precision and the fortitude of hand calculations, of penciled graphs, blueprints and circle templates on an angled drafting board. Mechanical tools where mechanical telephone bells call through the plumes above crowded ashtrays and coffee rings on flecked formica, the desks in rows, the men in ties and shirt sleeves. I am almost there in my pixie cut and white shoes on family day. Agape at the dark control room, unaware of the beauty of logarithms, the fluid promises of computing, that this laminate rule will soon outlast its heyday, a burnished leather case, and all of us. There is war on the news. We are scaling the moon, and everyone I love is living or yet to be born. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That's
Thanks.
wonderful and timely. So, can we talk a little bit about
Sure.
your process?
Sure.
What's your writable spot? Like your all-time
Well,
favorite?
being last, I knew you were going to ask that, so it gave me a few moments to think about it. I either need quiet or white noise.
Okay.
For the first time in probably, I don't know, 15, 20 years, I have a little bit of quiet space, and the kitchen table is the largest piece of real estate. I do use paper, so my most writable space is that with hot coffee. And all this is kind of a new
New routine?
I don't know if I can call it a routine, but yeah, I will. I'm going to claim it. A new routine. I also love the cafe with just enough noise that doesn't involve me. Yeah. Other parts of writing, though, I mean, that's actually putting words into structure. But the other parts of writing for me that come with kind of background motor activity, so walking, hiking, hand washing dishes, sweeping the floor or the patio, you know, that's a lot of where things come.
Oh, I'd have a much cleaner floor if that were part of my process.
Right now I'm like, oh my God, I have time for coffee and a clear space, and the floor just, you know.
Oh, okay. So there are times that there's some dust collecting on you.
But yeah, I'm very much a cafe and a large desk with paper as well as laptop.
Yeah. I like the cafe with just the right amount of noise that's nothing to do with me. It's like being in a hospital, and they're kind of taking care of things in the background.
Yeah. But for a long time I wrote in the margins of my workday as someone else's employee, so it was, you know, small lyric pieces that I could carry in my head.
Yeah.
And hope that at some point I would write them down and
I've had to do that
build
too.
on them.
Yeah, right when, like, you turn and write something down when they're not looking, but you're doing the job too. So, what about, like, how do you deal with keeping at bay the things of the world that
I'm
are
not great
disruptive?
at that. It's usually I'm more likely to indulge in, you know, oh, shiny thing, you know, follow that distraction. But it's an ongoing conversation, so I'm usually linking it to something that's got my curiosity and my kind of thread of ongoing work, because I often have, say, an essay or a lecture and a poem, and things are kind of cycling in and out of the same thread of thought.
Yeah.
So I do spend too much time, I think, kind of perseverating about the news and wondering what to do at times.
But
other times becoming active. But
it does tie in with your work, though. I mean, you're not someone who your work is a completely separate thing from.
No, I mean, as poets right now, this is the time, because to cultivate making connection with other ways of thinking, with other backgrounds, with other voices, and opening up our thinking, poetry is a wonderful medium for that. So it's definitely the time.
I agree. I think it's a really stimulating, inspiring time, although a frightening time. So if you can sort of, and what Charlotte was saying about the urgency to get up and do something, that kind of pulls you away from your work, but yet it's all part of this struggle that's creating, I think, a lot of really fresh and amazing work right now.
It is. There are times, though, when I feel that I can't bring my own work to share because things are perhaps too dark at any given time. And that's when I look toward great wisdom from the past, usually, someone like Hafiz or Rumi. And that helps me reconnect with it.
Do you have a lot of projects that you're working on at a given time?
Yes.
Like,
some of them have been waiting for decades.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, I'll find it again, you know, literally the back of the envelope or the restaurant napkin, you know, all these kind of pre-digital paper age things, and or I've been carrying them in my head for a couple months, waiting for that time to listen and hear what comes next, and then start building again.
Wonderful. So, okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been delightful.
It's great to have you here. Okay, so we have a little bit more time tonight, so we're going to have one more reader that we've already seen tonight. But I want to thank, before we do that, I want to thank everyone here at Mid-Peninsula Media Center for their wonderful efforts and talent and being so wonderful to work with. We are so blessed to be able to come here and do this. Thank you so much. Also to our fabulous readers, I hope that we'll have you all again soon. We're just really delighted that everyone is able to come here and share their work with us. And each one of you has brought something really special and unique to the evening. We so appreciate it. Thank you so much. Also, so we're going to have Charlotte Muse read us out tonight because she came prepared and she has just the right note to end us with us this evening. Come on, Charlotte.
Thank you. I thought I'd read. I'm very. I mean, there are so many things to be outraged about, but I'm particularly outraged about the border situation in America. I've never, in my lifetime, seen this. So I have two poems about that. And okay, so the first one is called Rio Grande. The river's swollen brown, sparkling in the sun, dangerous currents but narrower here. Just across the water is the country of dreams. After long miles and months of waiting, who would turn away? Young trees and long grasses tremble on the bank. The river moves as in a dream. Tanya watches Oscar swim across with their little girl. She sees them reach the other side. They catch their breaths. He rests a bit, then tells the child to wait while he brings her mother. But she won't lend her father to the river. When she sees him swim away, she jumps in and tries to follow. He turns back for her. The river takes them both on its long, glistening tongue. In one gulp, it swallows them. What we can see of their deaths is in the photo. Her small, curly head and her father's close together in the tangle of his rolled-up black t-shirt, staring down into the water as if looking for minnows. There's her little arm around his neck, his bare back and slender legs, his bare feet, his navy trunks with 3 white stripes along the sides, her tiny black sneakers, her red pants. Someone showed the photo to Rosa in El Salvador. She said, "I feel so many things, tenderness, because at no time did he let go of her. I told him, son, don't go, but if you do go, leave me the girl." He said to me, "No, Mama, how can you think I would leave her?" Many foreign miles away, looking at the photo, we hear the picture say those words, and something hard in us drowns, like a stone thrown into water. And this is on the same subject, border songs. To Marco Antonio Munoz of Honduras, who crossed the Rio Grande with his wife and 3-year-old son, and who, when the border patrol pulled the boy screaming from his arms, broke free and ran after him, we're sorry. He had some kind of breakdown, they said, and when he wouldn't stop struggling, they threw him into a padded cell. We didn't think he would hang himself. I want to write a song about his long night's frenzy alone after his son was taken, about his wife's horrified eyes and the depths of love and the depths of disappointment. America is this cruel. I have few words for the song, only no, no, no. He's dead by his own hand. Sing with me, no, no, no. His story is ended. The boy and his mother are somewhere. Sing no, no, sing where? Where has America gone? Look for it in the money bags. No, no, it's not there. In the empty eyes of the president? No, no, nowhere. To the Border Patrol agents who poured out water left for the desperate onto the sand, Jesus left it there for Jose and Maria. The song is already written. To pregnant, nearly penniless Gabriela Hernandez, who fled with her 2 little boys to escape killer gangs in Honduras and who stared down sickness, starvation, and thirst, we have no need for your huge love here, nor your huge determination either. Get in line. When I can find words large enough, I want to write her song. So maybe I don't know, one more? Okay, well, I'll say one. This is called In Which I Forgive the River. Okay. In which I forgive the river. Where it pours clear over freckled stones, I want to sit and watch a leaf riding the surface, a fish patrolling the water road, down streams through sun glint and flash of the froth, on through the river of light, river of water, river of light. And I'll plunge in, trusting the river, which is not trustworthy, to be carried on its back, giving up my own motion to look at the unrolling sky, turning like a log to stare down until I lose breath. Already I'm dissolving in the world. There's my death, cawing from a leafless branch and waiting for me to make a move it wants to notice. If you crush me against rocks or force me to breathe like a fish, I forgive you, river. I loved you anyway. Let me say that. Thank you. Is that okay?
Thank you, Charlotte. Stay. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more time. Okay, do you have any more you could read?
I
Do you want,
yeah.
how much time do we have? 2?
2
You have a
minutes?
short one?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a
I'll
short
stay
one.
with you.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, small ode to joy for Jennifer, a friend of mine. Hurry, the red bud won't wait, or the freesia, or the silver-bark cherry. All the new webs shining and floating like unrounded bubbles won't wait. They'll be gone even faster. Hurry. If we find ourselves asking whether this is the last spring, it's not because we want to know. It's only that asking makes us look. I know a walk to a waterfall, past smaller streams wetting the path, past butterflies flashing and banana slugs oozing blindly towards a heaven of pink-flowered sorrel. There's the sound of the stream, a distant woodpecker, and the falls themselves, where water pours down spreading like hair over the rock. We don't owe everything to madmen who think we're only empty shoes in their jig with death. We don't owe everything to sorrow.
Woo! Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good night. We'll see you next time. We'll have another one in a few months. So look for us again in the near future. And we will have some of these people back soon because we didn't get quite enough time with them. Thank you very much. We still have another, okay. We're done. Okay. Thank you. I'm done. Bye. Okay. I thought that meant keep going.